Hello, kind people. Welcome to the latest edition of the mini-series on the greatest hits of the listener crosswords in 2021. This is going to be the last episode in which we finally reach the winner of the puzzle of the year in 2021, and it's going to be the puzzle called Manhunt by the setter called Shark. I'm going to put it on screen in a moment. So you might, if you have been following, you might have noticed that we didn't manage to cover all puzzles in the top five. The reasons for that are that one of the top five puzzles is a mathematical, and they are totally different beasts to the normal thematic cryptics. And the second one is that one of the top five is called Variety Show by Enigmatist, and I'm going to put a link in the description, but there is a whole long, beautiful blog post on the Guardian website by Alan Connor about that very puzzle. Basically, it was, according to many people who have much more experience in solving the listener than I do, it was the hardest listener they have ever attempted. And a little kind of personal note, I got hit by that one when I was away. I was not in the UK, so I didn't have my copies of Chambers Crossword Dictionary with me or other aids I might use for this thematic cryptics. And yeah, that was bloody hard. So I'm not going to cover that one, probably because I wouldn't be able even to kind of reconstruct the thought process behind there. So have a look at the blog post. The link is in the description. And that leaves three puzzles in the top five. We covered two of them, and today is the turn of the winner. So here is the winner. I must also apologize. I must also say at this point that it's quite timely that this is the last episode, as it's the last day of February, and in 4 days in Bristol there's going to be a listener dinner. I think it's also going to be an anniversary listener dinner because the first listener dinner happened exactly 50 years ago, and we're going to learn the top five puzzles for 2022, and then I'm going to maybe cover those in the future videos. Okay, so let's talk about this one. So Shark is an amazing setter, and again, like a little side comment, Shark was also the person who was the driving force behind the Magpie treasure hunt last year. So the Magpie, the other magazine that I mentioned in these videos before, turned 20 years, and they had two special anniversary issues in November and December, one in 2022, and there was a treasure hunt spanning those two issues. And although it was brutally hard and only two people managed to find the treasure, it was an extremely beautiful construction where every single puzzle in those two issues had some connection to the treasure hunt, and one special puzzle was kind of was basically almost fully constructed for the treasure hunt, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful construction. I think if you are a subscriber to the Magpie, or you can check the solution on the Magpie website. If you're not a subscriber to the Magpie, this alone might be a good reason to subscribe. Okay, so now I think I've done with introductions, so let's talk about this puzzle. It's called Manhunt by Shark. It features a very unusual grid, as you can see. You can see some bars separating across entries and some entry numbers for the cross entries. You don't see anything for the down ones, and then there is a separate column. So let's read the preamble for this. Clues are given in the normal order, right? So that means that, we have the crosses and they're numbered, and we have the downs and they're not numbered because we don't know where the first down starts. But if we were to put the bars corresponding to the separating the down entries. So if we put the horizontal bars in, and that would, put the numbers in, and those numbers, would be in order for these clues. So down entries, numbers, and horizontal bars are not shown and must not be added. Several cells must contain two letters separated by a diagonal line oriented so that all entries letters appear in the right order. This is initially ambiguous in one case. Taking one letter from each two-letter cell, row by row, gives the start of a historic message whose next two words, allocation, appear in rows of the grid. Each clue to a normal entry, and we have to think, once we finish reading this preamble, what this actually means, contains an extra word that must be removed before solving. These words suggest the means of transmission. Solvers must decode the grid according to that, deriving one letter from each row, resolving the earlier ambiguity, and entering it in the column of the right to show part of the query's description. Finally, a letter must be changed, making a real word, so that the triangular group of one-letter cells contains the jumbled 6 letters of the culprit's name. So, quite a lot of stuff going on there, and it's not even clear what half of it means for the time being. I think what we need to understand is that if you look at the numbers in brackets, they are sometimes longer than the space we have for the entries. So one across is black eye after back and bat. That's 9 letters, and we only have 6 here, which means that 3 pairs of letters get squeezed into one cell. Same would turn out to be true for the down entries, although right now we don't really know how they are split because we don't see the horizontal bars. There are though some normal entries. So as you can see, there's 3 across. Wheat plant in country being cropped has 4 letters. Has the answer is 4-letter long, and there is a space for it in the grid, which is 4 letters long, and that probably is these are probably the normal entries that are specified in the preamble. So those clues would contain extra words that must be removed before solving, and somehow this would suggest the means of transmission. So I'm not going to solve it all live as with other crosswords in these videos. I think I'm going to first show you the solution to the clues, and maybe we'll discuss some of the clues, and then and how the answers are entered, and then I'm going to show you the end game, because basically this is where things become very, very beautiful. Okay, so this is the solution to all the clues. Let's see if I can remember why these are the answers to some of them. Okay, well, here's one. Let's look at this normal one, which we talked about. Wheat plant in country being cropped. So Benny is apparently a type of plant, and there is a country Benin, and when you crop it, so you cut it, you remove the last letter, you get Benny, and that's a plant. And then wheat is an extra word. So this is not a wheat plant. So this is one example. Let's see if I can think about why some other clues are what they are. Let's see. Well, okay, down. The first down clue is a rose, which means nicked, and its English is E, and rosé is wine, and so on. So what happens once we do that? Well, the one across is rear mouse, which is a type of bat, and it's 9 letters long, and so somehow we have to put 2 letters in one cell number of times. And if you look at the one down, it's arrows, and so we probably think that, you know, there is E and R here, and there's R and E here, and what this means is that somewhere here we need to put the diagonal line that way, right? Because then it will read correctly in both horizontal and vertical directions. Let's see. Okay, well, 2 down is arid, 1 inferior to Australia declared passé, and I guess here 1 links to 1 wine from here. Red is another type of wine. Australian abbreviates to A, and thus we get an answer. And so again, here we have AR in rear mouse, here we have AR as well. So chances are those are again compressed, although of course it might be the case that, you know, there is just a plain R here. And I can't really remember what the answer is here, so let me have a quick check. Oh, I actually was wrong, and it's only, so, you see? So that was the tricky bit, so we can't really confidently put these things in, we have to pencil them. So in this case, it turns out that arrows was going from here, and rear mouse started just like that. But for this, for the next 2 letters, that indeed was the case, that, you know, we had to put a diagonal line like this, so that both arid and rear mouse could work. So let's have a look at how the final grid is what the final grid looks like. Sometimes you could actually, I think it was possible to, for the down entries, to guess. So basically, if you find that there is an extra word in the down entry, that immediately tells you that there are no squeezed letters, and then if you happen to know where this word starts, you could just, you know, put it in, and that helped a lot. But basically, you ended up with this weird looking grid with lots of diagonal lines and with 2 letters per cell in the cells with those diagonal lines, and no clue what this all means at the moment. However, now we can decode the message. So now what the preamble is telling us to do is to take 1 letter from each 2-letter cell, and that would give the start of a historic message whose next 2 words appear in the rows of the grid. So, and you can kind of see that, I mean, it takes some time to decode this, but eventually you can arrive at the message. So taking from this A and taking from this M and U, you could get a message: a murder has, and then there is something strange happening. For some reason, the only sensible thing that you could get is a murder has gust been committed. Committed at. So so there is this strange message: a murder has just been committed at, and the next two words allocation would appear in rows of the grid. Now if we look at the clues to the normal entries and have a look at those extra words, it actually turns out that the extra words are wheat, So this was an extra word as well. Wheatstone two needle telegraph. And if you then Google Wheatstone two needle telegraph, or if you Google this strange message, what you find is this fascinating story. So I have to open the browser now. So what you find is this. So William Fothergill Cooke and Charles Wheatstone invented this means of transmission, Cooke and Wheatstone telegraph, in the 1830s. And one of the events that, maybe the single event that made the public accept this novelty was the role that the telegraph played in capturing the murderer John Tawell, and there is a whole segment on that. So this lovely chap that you can see, John Tawell, was so he murdered someone in Slough. Slough is the sort of place where these things happen. I refer people to the wonderful poem by John Benjamin about Slough, if you have not heard of this beautiful English town. And then he thought he managed to successfully escape by catching a train from Slough to Paddington. However, both stations were equipped with Cooke-Wheatstone telegraph, and so a following message was sent. A murder has just been committed at Salt Hill, and the suspected murderer was seen to take a first-class ticket to London by the train which left Slough at 7:42 p.m. He is in the garb of a Quaker, with a great coat on which reaches nearly down to his feet. He is in the last compartment of the second-class compartment. So as you can see, there are some funny spelling issues here, and the reason is that the two-needle system had to omit the letters J, Q, and Z, and thus just had to be spelled as gust, and there is this very strange spelling of Quaker as K-W-A-K-E-R. And there is even an amusing story that the receiving operator in Paddington requested a resend until a small boy suggested that the sending operator should be allowed to complete the word, and then things were understood. So now what the puzzle is telling us is to decode the grid according to this means of transmission. So how should we do that? Well, if we now look at how this two-needle telegraph operates, there is actually a code for the two-needle Cooke-Wheatstone telegraph, and as you can see, it consists of a bunch of diagonal lines which correspond to the needle turning in certain direction, either left or right, and I guess this means that the needle turns in quick succession both left and right, and then the other needle just stays where it is. So what we have to do now is we have to look at the grid as so if we now look at the grid, you can see that each row has a bunch of diagonal lines, and some of them have the vertical line. And the vertical bars were given to us from the very beginning, and this now has to be decoded according to this code. So in the first row we have 3 diagonal lines in one direction and 1 vertical one. If we now look at what that corresponds to, we can see that this is the letter G, and so and then the second one would be the letter A, which is 2 diagonal lines in the other direction and 1 vertical one. So let's have a look at that. Yeah, exactly this is happening, right? We have this diagonal line and this vertical one. And so we have to decode this whole thing, and we end up with part of this description, so we end up with garb of a Quaker. So what are the other bits here that we need to check? Well, Salt Hill, the place where the murder was committed, you can see it here. If we now change this I to A, we get the jumbled surname of the suspect, John Tawell. And this is how you solve the puzzle. And I find it an extremely beautiful construction, mostly because of this thematic use of the bars in the grid. And it is not uncommon to see, you know, two letters in being squeezed in one cell in thematic cryptics. Not that it happens every week, but you know, once a year you do get this sort of constructions. But here, this just played a very beautiful, you know, thematic role. So this was when you suddenly realize that this is the code for this two-needle Cook Wheatstone telegraph. This is a really beautiful penny drop moment. So this puzzle won Puzzle of the Year in 2021, and in about 5 days we will learn who won the Puzzle of the Year for 2022. Let me make a let's make a prediction. I don't know what exactly who is going to win and what the composition of top 5 is going to be, but I think that the puzzle by Twin is going to make top 5, and the puzzle by Yorick is also going to make top 5. These are my 2 predictions. Let's see if I'm correct come Saturday. Thank you for watching, and I hope to be back with some 2022 listeners. Thank you. Bye.